micro improvements, there's a direct causal link to perseverance. You can't persevere if you're feeling like a failure all the time. You need to feel successful.
Hello and welcome to Up Close and Personal at Invokage Studio, where we're diving deep into leadership and education equity today. I'm your host for the evening, Riya Mendirata, and I have with me Mr. Vikram Bhat.
Hi, Riya.
Hi. I'm going to quickly introduce you to our audience. Vikram is the director of Bangalore International Centre. He's a passionate educator and comes with a rich experience in technology and the finance sector. Vikram, we're very happy to have you here today. I want to start by asking you what leadership means to you.
It's a very big and very easy to ramble question.
Go ahead, go for it.
I personally, now, I think Shaheen spoke a little bit about it this morning. My view on leadership now is essentially values in action. Whether you work as a leader in a small setup or a big setup, every setup is driven by some value system.
Right.
And if you are able to embody those values in action, that's what makes you a leader.
Okay.
And I think, especially in the world we live in today, where talk is cheap and not usually backed up by action, that's where I think the real value of leadership emerges. Or at least, in my view today, that's what I'm exploring as an idea of leadership.
Yeah. Tell us where you've seen this kind of leadership. I'm sure it's the definition that you're sharing with us today has evolved over time. So tell us where you've seen this kind of leadership of values in action.
If I look at my own life, I've been lucky. So ever since I moved from the corporate sector into education about 15 years ago, I have had a chance to observe this close up with the bosses that I've had.
Right.
The first person I saw this was with Ms. Sabita Raghunath, who was my principal at Parikrama schools when I just started teaching. So if you take something simple, like a value she held very dear, which was that you teach children, you don't teach subjects. And every day I could see her model that, because when you work with children who come from first generation school going families or coming from adversity, you see a lot of behavioral challenges.
Right.
And in that context, how you relate to them is really what makes them love the subject you teach, whether it's math or physics in that case, or history or English in my case. So that was one really good example. The last 5 years, or from 18 to 22, I had the privilege of working in Delhi with the school system in Delhi, where Mr. Sisodia was my boss. And he's another incredible example of the same idea, where we keep hearing this word grace under pressure, or grace under fire. And I can't think of anyone who had more pressure on him than anyone else in that government, given the number of ministries he managed. And in my 4.5 years of working with him, I had enough reason to be yelled at by him.
Right.
But I would have seen me seeing him speak disrespectfully to me, not once.
Okay.
Right? And that is an incredible aspect of values in action, where you say that everyone's doing a job. According to him, once I'm out of this role, Vikram is Vikram, Manish is Manish. These roles don't matter. And so you're able to actually live that out, where you chastise someone for doing something wrong, but literally the next minute we've all moved on.
Great.
And so that was one example of that. And now in this current role that I'm in as the director of Bangalore International Centre, my predecessor, Ravi Chandar, was another example of that, where people keep talking about the lack of public spaces in the city. Ravi chose to do this job pro bono for 5 years to set up the Bangalore International Centre. It's a labor of love on his part. And now we have a thriving public space.
Yeah, thanks. It's always inspiring to listen to these examples. Thanks for sharing. I'd like to shift gears now to talk about the education sector, and specifically the massive challenge that stands before us. And for that, something that we've been focusing on exclusively as Shiksha Lokam for the past couple of years is micro improvements. For our viewers and listeners today, would you like to shed some light on how you think micro improvements offer help, support to all stakeholders involved, CSOs, stakeholders, and the government in ensuring impact in education?
It's an old joke, but it works well for this context. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
Right.
So the idea of micro improvements, I think, are super important, particularly in the context of the problem we are trying to solve. Because one of the biggest causes of failure, particularly in the social sector, and particularly in education. I think Sanjay sir mentioned that in his speech just a little while ago. That Kothari Commission said it then. We've had this narrative of failure in education for a long time.
Right.
Now, what do micro improvements do? I think which is so important to analyze. They give people a chance to feel successful on a regular basis, ideally on a daily basis, but close enough to that,
Right.
and often enough that in the end they stay the course. Nobody drops out of that. And in the end, all problems, if you analyze it, difficult problems, only get solved through perseverance. There is no other one determinant, if I had to pick, which helps you solve a problem. It's perseverance.
Right.
And micro improvements, there's a direct causal link to perseverance. Because to persevere, you can't persevere if you're feeling like a failure all the time. You need to feel successful.
Yeah.
And micro improvements let you do that.
They do. They do. In fact, I've seen that happen in action, and I'm sure you have too. I want to ask you what you think is the best way to introduce this almost a mindset shift in going from tackling challenges as they are to breaking them down into micro improvements. We've tried to enable them at scale, and we've been successful in some areas, but it's still a challenge that we want to solve. How would you recommend we go about that?
First of all, don't have a big Angrezi word for it.
Micro improvements? What do you recommend we call it?
I don't know. We can call it like a toffee or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
but if you look at the books, Nudge, Power of Habit, the 3 or 4 books around this idea, right?
Right.
And they've branded it differently.
Got it.
And it's important for people to buy into that branding
Right.
as an idea which has to stick in their heads. So, and I use the word toffee facetiously, but it could work, you never
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And this is where you have to workshop it, try it out, use focus groups, do whatever. But it has to finally be something that people latch onto.
Right.
So, an idea that was recently introduced to me is, I'm working through a bad back injury.
Okay.
I'm trying to fix it. And a lot of it is bad posture.
Okay.
So my physiotherapist has given me this new idea called associated habits.
Okay.
So what you do is, I'm supposed to stand a certain way, be very mindful about it.
Sure.
But it's very hard to do that artificially. You look like a clown, right? You're walking around trying to you look like a belly dancer basically.
Okay.
Because you're moving your sacral bone back and forth.
Okay.
What you want to do is, you take a habit that you already do, like brushing your teeth. You do it every day.
Right.
So use that and bring this with it.
Okay.
And observe yourself doing that, and over time, then it becomes second nature.
Okay.
So what I was saying is, but yeah, if you call it associated habit, who will do it?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah,
sound
it's
interesting.
not much better
yeah.
than micro
Yeah,
improvement.
it's just like so. That's what I meant.
Yeah, but I like the principle of it. Attach it to something that's already happening.
And that micro improvements can come that way.
Right.
The reason I brought up the thing was, one was just in terms of only nerds like such names.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, like, this is a way to operationalize micro improvements as well. Like, you take it to something that someone's already doing, and can you scaffold it on top of that?
All right. So a part of the reason we wanted to do micro improvements also is to restore agency. We don't want micro improvements to be led by someone sitting at the center and saying, okay, these are the tiny steps that you will do for your change. It helps people get that agency through platforms like Diksha, where you can design your own micro improvements. I want you to shed some light on what is the importance of restoring agency in stakeholders. What are some examples you've seen of when restoring agency happens, things change magically? Not magically, but more drastically.
And since we're all about systemic change, I'll use 2 systemic examples. I look at Delhi as a school system.
Right.
Only when agency got transferred to teachers, where they had a reasonable amount of freedom to run classes the way they wanted, didn't fully happen, but to conduct assessments the way they wanted,
Right.
did they take ownership of the larger vision that Manish ji had, that this is what we want to do. And, the results are very, very, it's early days, but it's incredible that they embraced an idea like the happiness curriculum, the entrepreneurship mindset curriculum. These are all very, very abstract ideas for a large group of teachers to buy into and then go along. But they did it just because what agency does is it makes you super receptive to new ideas on a first principle basis.
Okay.
Because you're thinking for yourself.
Right.
And you see something good in the world and you say, yeah, we should do this.
Yeah.
Or you see something not good and you say, hey, we should stop this.
Right.
And it applies to citizenship everywhere you go.
Right.
Problem is, they get harder to manage, right? Then you can't fool them, you can't, that's the risk downside of agency, which is why we don't bet on it as much. But the other example is from another city, Indore, where right down to the grassroots workers, who Indore is the cleanest city in India by a country mile year over year now.
Right.
Like not even, there's no competition left. And that's happened because at the absolute grassroots level, at the final node, where the person is picking up the garbage, they have the agency and they're empowered and they feel it is my job to do this. And these are two systemic examples of how it happened. It takes time and you have to keep, I think the most important thing is to make people feel heard, which is the hardest thing to do in a hierarchical systemic setup. But I think that's why it's so important as well.
Yeah, that's a great example of Indore. Thank you for sharing that. I'm now going to move us to our next segment, which is a rapid fire. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'll just throw some fun questions at you.
He's going to throw things at me, sure.
No, just fun questions for now. And then you don't have much time, so just answer with whatever's on your mind.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
As ready as I'll be.
Okay. If you were to be a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Invisibility.
Okay. What would you do with that?
I don't know.
Okay, just fun things. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning person or night owl?
Night owl.
What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
Moved to Delhi on a lark. Decided to move to Delhi in basically half a day.
Okay. That's quite adventurous. If you could master any skill instantly, what would it be?
Play the guitar.
Do you currently play the guitar? Okay, great response then. Beaches or mountains?
Tough one. Beaches.
Beaches or forests?
Forests.
Okay. My last question to you is to say something for teachers. What message would you like to give to them?
I think the most important message for teachers that I would have is that we are very, very thankful for doing what you do. Your job is incredibly hard on a daily basis. And we're sorry nobody gets it, or most people don't get it. But the job you do is incredibly hard, and thank you for doing it.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that, Vikram. It was lovely having you on the show, and thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you for being kind in the rapid fire round.
That is it for today. Thank you for watching us or hearing us. We will see you in the next segment.